They say funerals bring families together. But that day, the Hayes family proved otherwise. The church still smelled of lilies and smoke from the candles when the whispers began. Not prayers, not grief. Whispers about money. Eleanor Hayes, a widow of 72, sat by the coffin, her hands trembling as she clutched the folded obituary. Across the room, her children, Daniel, Claire, and Marcus, weren't talking about their father's legacy. They were arguing about his will. Dad promised me the company shares. No, I managed everything while he was sick. I deserve control. He left Mom the house. That's enough. That last line cut deeper than the funeral itself. Eleanor looked up, eyes red, face pale. But she said nothing. Because she knew something they didn't. The empire they were fighting over was built by both of them. Yet now they called her too old to handle business. A burden, a relic. And as their voices grew louder, her silence grew colder. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply stared at her husband's coffin and whispered to herself, if they want war, they'll get it. Because behind that silence, something dangerous had begun to wake. They called it for her comfort. That's what Daniel said when he took her off his key. That's what Claire repeated when she moved Eleanor into the smallest corner room of the mansion, the one that used to belong to the maid. And Marcus? He just signed the papers, transferring every company decision to them, all with polite smiles and sharpened knives behind them. Mom, you've done enough, Claire said sweetly. You should rest. We'll handle the business now. Rest. That word echoed like an insult. Because while they signed documents and celebrated their new era, Eleanor was the one who once balanced the books, negotiated contracts behind closed doors, and built the empire beside her husband, when none of them were even old enough to spell profit. Now they handed her a fixed allowance, like pocket money. She had to ask permission to spend her own fortune. Days turned into weeks. Her family's footsteps filled the mansion. Laughter, phone calls, bills, but in her wing, silence. Just the ticking of an old clock and the weight of betrayal. One night, Eleanor stood by the window, watching headlights leave the driveway. They were out celebrating, signing a new deal that once would have had her name on it. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, frail, forgotten, but far from finished. And for the first time in months, she smiled. Because the woman they thought they silenced was the one who still held every secret of the empire. They took her power, but not her memory. And soon, that memory would become her greatest weapon. The mansion used to wake with noise. Coffee brewing, phones ringing, laughter echoing from the dining hall. Now, there's just the sound of one cup, one chair pulled out, and Eleanor, sitting alone at a table meant for 8. The butler passes by, but doesn't stop. The maid refills her cup without a word. They don't look her in the eye anymore. She's invisible in her own house. The family she raised, the empire she built, now moves around her like she's already gone. Her breakfast goes cold. The walls whisper memories she can't silence. And from the next room, she hears them, her children, laughing. Daniel's voice cuts through the air like a blade. She wouldn't last a day without us. A laugh follows, a mocking one, the kind that doesn't come from confidence, but from fear disguised as power. Eleanor doesn't move. She just listens. Every word burns, but she lets it. Because pain, she knows, is how strength remembers where it began. Then, she sees it. An old briefcase near the cabinet, dusty, half open, forgotten. It belonged to her husband. Inside, faded papers, financial reports, account ledgers, and at the bottom, a flash drive. Her hand trembles slightly as she picks it up. A small smile creeps across her face. They thought they'd cut her off. They thought they'd erased her from the company. But this was access. They took her power, mocked her silence. But they forgot. Eleanor Hayes still had the keys to their empire's vault. That night, Eleanor slips into her late husband's study, a room her children hadn't stepped foot in for years. The air smells of old leather and dust, the faint ghost of his cologne still lingering. Every shelf, every drawer untouched since the funeral. Her trembling fingers trace across the desk. She opens one drawer, empty. Another, full of receipts, faded ink, forgotten memories. Then she finds it, a brown, leather-bound ledger. His handwriting, bold, deliberate, full of purpose. She flips through the pages and freezes. Names, numbers, investors, private accounts. Half of them are her husband's allies. The other half, her children's enemies. Her heart races as she reads deeper. Everything that built the Hayes fortune is right here. Every connection, every debt, every weakness. And she realizes the empire isn't as stable as her sons pretend it is. One wrong move, and it could crumble. She leans back, thinking, her eyes sharp now. This ledger, it's not just history, it's ammunition. For years, she stayed quiet because she believed family mattered more than control. But family died the day greed walked into her home. She closes the book slowly, a fire burning behind her calm expression. Her voice, quiet yet firm. If they want to play the game of greed, she looks toward the grand hallway, where portraits of her arrogant children hang. Then I'll play it better. They think she's old, harmless, forgotten. But she's about to become the ghost in their empire. Unseen, unstoppable, and in control. While their children sleep soundly in their lavish homes, Eleanor sits alone under a dim desk lamp, a cup of cold tea by her side. Her wrinkled fingers hover over the keyboard, hesitating for a moment, then typing with quiet determination. The old ledger lies open beside her, pages marked, circled, and annotated. She's studying every line, every forgotten name, the same way her husband once studied opportunity. But this time, it's her turn. She logs into an online trading platform, the one her son once mocked her for not understanding. She chuckles softly. Let's see who's useless now. First, it's small, a few thousand from her pension fund. She buys into the companies her children ignore, the startups they laugh at. Day after day she learns, reading articles, market charts, even online forums full of strangers half her age. Her hands shake from exhaustion, but her eyes burn with purpose. Every night she grows sharper, smarter, stronger. She starts to notice patterns. The very industries her husband once invested in are rising again. She knows where the currents are shifting because she helped build them decades ago. Weeks turn into months. Her tiny investments multiply. Slowly, quietly, her balance grows. She's not doing this for greed. She's doing it to prove that they were wrong, that age doesn't mean weakness, and silence doesn't mean surrender. The next morning, her children call to check in, not out of love, but obligation. They ask how she's feeling. She smiles gently and says, "I'm doing better than you think." They hang up, uninterested. But if they'd stayed on the line a little longer, they'd have heard the quiet ding of another trade completed. Behind closed doors, the woman they abandoned is building something unstoppable. And when the storm hits their empire, they'll never see where it came from. It starts with whispers. A lawsuit here, a deal gone wrong there. The mighty Hayes Corporation, once untouchable, begins to crack. At first, her children laugh it off. It's just market pressure, they say. But deep down, the fear begins to crawl in. Board meetings turn into battlegrounds. Brothers accusing sisters. Sisters blaming advisors. They forget teamwork. They forget her husband's values. And Eleanor? She watches quietly from her small study. News playing softly on her tablet. Every red headline feels like a confession of karma. Hayes Corp faces major lawsuit over fraud allegations. Internal conflict threatens family business. She takes a slow sip of tea, calm amid the chaos. The empire they stole from her is beginning to crumble under their own greed. They call her sometimes, not to ask for advice, but to complain. "Mom, everything's falling apart. We might lose the company." She only replies with a faint sigh. "Then maybe you should have listened when I still had a voice." Days turn to weeks, and the cracks widen. Investors pull out. Suppliers vanish. The mighty Hayes fortune starts to bleed. But then, quietly, without fanfare, something strange happens. A mysterious investor starts buying up their corporate debt. Old accounts are cleared. Liens are paid. Every time the children check the records, one name appears again and again. E.H. Trust Holdings. They have no idea who it is. No clue that the initials belong to the same woman they shoved into silence. In her study, Eleanor closes her laptop and whispers, "Let's see who survives without me now." The family thinks the storm is over, but the real thunder is the name behind those initials. The Hayes Corporation is drowning. Investors flee. Employees panic. Reporters circle like vultures. Then, suddenly, a miracle. A mysterious investor steps in. Funds pour into the company's failing divisions. Departments once on the brink of closure come alive again. Headlines explode across the media. Unknown benefactor rescues Hayes empire. And now the Hayes angel investor, a mystery billionaire, saves hundreds of jobs. The children, desperate and exhausted, sit in their marble boardroom. Faces pale, eyes bloodshot. Relief washes over them. "Whoever this investor is," saith the eldest son, "they saved us." Cameras flash. Smiles return. They toast champagne to their unknown hero. But far from that glittering room, in the dim light of her study, Eleanor Hayes watches the live news broadcast on her tablet. Her wrinkled hands tremble, not with weakness, but with satisfaction. She scrolls past the headlines, her foundation's name printed in bold. "The Eleanor Hope Foundation." "Hope," she whispers with a faint smile. "Something you all lost the moment you chose greed." The irony cuts deep. Her children don't even notice her initials in the company's savior. They're too busy basking in glory they didn't earn. Behind that gentle face, a storm still brews. She's not doing this out of kindness. Not yet. This is strategy, control, a quiet reclamation of power. Every dollar she invests buys her more than equity. It buys silence, influence, and revenge wrapped in gratitude. At dinner that night, her youngest daughter says, "Mom, can you believe someone saved us? Maybe there are still good people in the world." Eleanor looks up slowly. A faint smile curves her lips. "Maybe," she says softly. "You just never looked in the right place." Her gaze drifts to the window, the mansion lights reflected in her eyes. She's no longer the widow they silenced. She's the ghost in the system, guiding everything they think they control. They think they've been saved. But soon, they'll learn who they were really praying to. The boardroom smells of panic. Papers scattered. Voices clash. The empire her husband built, now hanging by a thread. Her children sit around the long mahogany table, arguing over who's to blame. We can't hold the company together anymore. Sell it before we lose everything. A new offer lands on the table. An acquisition proposal. Generous, life-saving. If they sign this, they can walk away rich, clean, and free from failure. But there's one question. Who's the controlling shareholder? The room stills. The legal advisor, pale and sweating, clears his throat. I believe the identity has just been confirmed. Every pair of eyes locks on him. He opens the folder, slow, deliberate, like peeling back the skin of a secret. One name glows on the ownership documents. Eleanor Hayes. For a heartbeat, no one breathes. The eldest son laughs nervously. That's impossible. She's retired. She has no control. The advisor shakes his head. She owns 78% of the remaining stock through her foundation. Silence. Utter silence. The same woman they'd confined to a corner room now owns the empire outright. Eleanor enters the boardroom quietly, cane in hand, eyes steady, back straight. The room parts like water. Her daughter stammers, "Mother, you were the investor?" Eleanor smiles, a calm, cold smile that freezes the air. You were so busy counting your shares, you forgot who taught your father to build this company. One of the sons snaps, "You planned this! You wanted us to fail!" She steps closer. "No, you did that on your own. I simply bought the pieces you left behind." The tension crackles like static. Every face around the table shifts. Shock, anger, guilt, fear. She glances at the company logo etched on the wall. Your father built this from nothing, and you almost buried it under your greed. She places her hand on the signed document. The company now under her full command. This empire was never yours to inherit. It was mine to reclaim. The air feels electric, as if the ghosts of their past are applauding her from the walls. They thought they stripped her of power, but now she owns every piece of their downfall. Be rush into the mansion, pale, panicked, breathless. The same hallways that once echoed with arrogance now feel like judgment corridors. Her eldest son bursts into the study. "Mother, you can't do this! The company, our legacy!" Eleanor looks up from her papers, calm, centered, unbothered. "Our legacy," she repeats softly. Her voice cuts sharper than any scream. You tore it apart the moment you put profit above family. The youngest daughter tries to speak. "We didn't mean to. We just thought you couldn't." Eleanor stands. Her cane hits the floor once, a sound that silences them all. "Couldn't what? Think? Lead? Survive without your permission?" She walks past them slowly, her presence heavy with quiet authority. The portraits of her late husband and ancestors seem to watch her reclaim the space. "You wanted control," she says coldly. "Now you'll work for it." The eldest scoffs. "You can't make us your employees." Eleanor stops at the door. "No," she replies, "but you already are." She turns, handing them documents, employment contracts under Hayes Foundation Enterprises. Their titles now stripped. Their salaries modest. Their signatures require if they want to keep even a fragment of their old life. The shock on their faces is almost satisfying. But she doesn't smile, because this isn't revenge. It's order being restored. You'll start where you should have, learning what it means to build, not just inhale it. Her words linger like smoke. The eldest son crumples the paper, his voice shaking. "You're punishing us!" She meets his eyes. "No, I'm saving you." For the first time, they see it not vengeance, but something deeper. A mother reclaiming not her power, but her purpose. She turns back toward the window, sunlight washing over her gray hair. "You thought I was weak when I was silent, But silence is when I was learning to rebuild. Her voice softens, almost to herself. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about redemption. But what she's about to rebuild won't just save her family. It will rewrite the meaning of power itself. A year later, the grand building that once symbolized greed now stands reborn. New banners read, "The Hayes Foundation, for dignity, for tomorrow." Inside, Eleanor walks through the marble halls, steady, regal, unstoppable. The portraits of past CEOs are gone. In their place, photos of students, caretakers, and smiling elders now line the walls. Her children stand by, humbled. The same hands that once reached for power now help her sign donation papers. She glances at them with quiet forgiveness. Not pride, but peace. "Mother," her eldest son says softly, "why give it all away?" Eleanor pauses, her eyes gentle yet sharp. "Because wealth means nothing if it dies with you." She looks out the window, where a group of orphan children laugh in the courtyard. The sound of innocence returning to the empire that once lost its soul. "They called me old," she begins in her closing narration, her voice calm and steady. "But wisdom doesn't fade. It waits." Montage. A scholarship letter stamped Hayes Foundation in the hands of a smiling girl. Nurses caring for forgotten elders in a new community center. A library wing named Eleanor's Promise. The mansion that once imprisoned her is now a sanctuary for the broken. Her empire, rebuilt not on greed, but grace. She sits in her office, the same chair her husband once ruled from, and gently switches on the lights. Across the city skyline, golden letters ignite on the glass tower. Eleanor Hayes Foundation. Her reflection glows beneath it. Older, wiser, victorious. They took my voice. They mocked my age. But they forgot one thing. She smiles softly, tears shining with pride and justice. "The family I built forgot me until I rebuilt everything." Her silhouette remains against the glowing name, a symbol of quiet revenge, eternal strength, and a legacy born from pain.